Modern Mystic, who also mentioned that Gary has some videos, which I started one of them on will, but I haven't seen, just for reference there, since he refers to Gary's video. So Modern Mystic goes through a lot of emotions, basically, and about the choosing, that you can't choose any of these. They're supposed to all be examples, which is interesting. Real quick, my point is that the brain is actually doing these chemical processes, and that's what feels like making a choice. And there's power, there's energy flowing through the brain, out through the nerves. The body then spends energy doing things. It's a study of power. The fact that it might come from somewhere that makes it not free doesn't change that investigation into how the power works, and that's the physical question. That's what we'd like to know, is what laws of physics enable this subjective perception that we have. You know, we've just named it, yeah, we've just labeled it, and that's so that we can collect data under that label and then evaluate it. But okay, acceptance. He says you can't do acceptance on Nick. You say that. I always get confused with the second and third person thing with videos, because you're just recognizing a pattern. I took notes, that's what I'm looking at over here. You're just recognizing a pattern, and that's not doing. But there's a pattern to all of this, which is with will. You know, you find yourself with a feeling that you just got. You might have willed yourself there, or woken up with it, or it could be considered undetermined. And the will is about where you go in the future. It's like the life as a river metaphor. If you're in the middle of a whitewater rapid, that's where you are. You can't choose not to be there. You're already there. That's not even the question of will. We're talking about if will can influence your future, not if it can influence something that's already happened. You know, it can't influence the past anymore. Right? So, regulating your will is like paddling in that river. It's like you can get yourself into an optional current and avoid that rapid, go through the other part of the river where it isn't so chaotic. And you just go through a lot of these. Anger, I don't just find myself angry because, yeah, as soon as I have an angry situation, the instant of its flooding on, my brain kicks in. I have a lot of reservation and redoubting that I do when I feel angry. It's not an emotion I feel I just go with. I immediately kick in all kinds of processing, including inhibitions. And I find, yes, I can address my feelings of anger over relatively short periods of time. Anticipation, yes, I can make an anticipation. If you have something coming up, you know, maybe it's something important, but, you know, I get tunnel vision on my projects and my work and things I'm doing, and, you know, I could not think about it at all. I might want to anticipate that, want to be prepared emotionally for it, because it's going to be a big thing when it comes, and I could build that anticipation by picturing it, picturing being there, picturing fun things about it. You know, whether or not I think those things are going to happen, they could be purely to elicit an emotional response from myself. Now you can back off and go, oh, but it's not you. But Nick, I don't believe in things. I don't believe there is any actual thing anywhere. They're all systems. So there is no atomic self-I. It's a word for the system, and we're just saying that the will is a feature of this system, meaning the system has a behavior we call will. Fearful or not fearful? One time when I was in my 20s, I used to walk out a lot to this beautiful old oak tree. I think probably was about 300 years old. This huge, beautiful oak tree. And I would take walks at night. And I took some walks on some pitch black nights, and I was surprised to find that I was scared. And there's mountain lions and bears up there. This is the foothills of Sierra foothills in California. But I wasn't afraid of those. I was just afraid of the dark. And I didn't find that acceptable. So I started, making sure I didn't rush through the very darkest part of the path, and instead I stood there. I would stand there in the dark and just feel the pleasantness of the night sounds, and the fear would be there. There's something behind me. I'm just like, I can hear the world around me, and I could visualize the world around me, and I could feel like I was a part of it. That kind of fear of the dark is a fear of disconnection with the environment, because we're so visually based. If you use your ears are not afraid of the dark. So you can just focus on what you can hear, on what you can listen to, and find out that that stream of sensations does not spark fear. Looking through your eyes when you can't see anything, sort of a desperate act, does. And, I totally solved that. And I was already grown up, and I didn't think I was afraid of the dark. Just something about this tunnel through the trees and this one pitch black, thing. And when I first went into it at night, it was cool. I love walking blind. I'll sometimes on a trail look at the trail and close my eyes and see how far I can get. And, so I was like, yeah, I know this road. I can do this road. I could do this, this windy, I don't know, it was about a quarter mile out to the tree or something. It wasn't all pitch black, but it was pretty dark, but there was a part where you literally couldn't see the road, and I just had to know the road and feel the road, and I liked that. And yet I found that, scared of the dark. So I didn't have to just say, oh, that's the kind of person I am. I could change that. Sadness. What are you going to do about sadness? Surprise. Okay, surprise is this one that has to do with surprise is temporary. You can't change something that's just surprised you, but you can change it in the future. I'll tell you how. If you visualize some kind of an event, or you experience it, of course, that's the kind of visualization that happens on its own. But if you want to do it without experiencing the surprise over and over, if you visualize something happening, you'll be less surprised when it happens. It's in the future. I'm paddling. My paddling does not change where I am right now, it changes where I am in the future. It gets confusing because our logic is always time static. And if I paddle the boat, we talk about I'm changing where I am. But the way you're doing it, it's like, well, no, back in time, you were still there. So you can't change what is right now. What is right now is the current state. The will is about the future. We could ask questions of how long and in what. But just all of these, yeah, you can affect all of these. Turning hate on and off. Yes, you fucking can turn hate off. Hate, I don't trust hate. Anger, wanting to attack someone, none of those require hate to me. I think hate is an unhealthy form of aggressive energy, pent up, sort of like a lapdog that bites people kind of emotion. Choose who you love. Well, by my definition of love, no, you don't choose. But so what? And you still paddle yourself into directions. When you think you might have feelings possibly for somebody, you can either try to be in their company more often, or you can run away from that and not be in their company so it doesn't grow, right? And you could do similar things with thought experiments basically in visualization in your mind. If you picture in your mind being with this person, then your affection is going to grow. I just had to say, some parents do choose to stop acting like they love their children. If there's some truism that they still do love them, I wouldn't believe that myself. But affection versus love, I think it's a matter of degree and labeling, and usually those words have to do with making more or less commitment about your feelings. Lust is a good example of one where, you know, you can just, it's very hard just to visualize yourself out of lust like a monk and just to let it go. It can be done like the fear example. If you let a strong feeling pass through you and you meditate it out, you just like, it comes through you and you don't act on it. You just feel it and don't act on it. Focus on your body and your breathing, and you're not doing the thing. Then you can't control it that way. But for most people with lust, the only way to control it is moving your body to a location where you don't allow yourself to get the input that you're reacting to. Longings, yes, we all manage to overcome our longings. I used to long for a Porsche 928 when I was 16, so yeah, I got over that. It's not like I still have it and I just feel defeated. In fact, if I hadn't given it up, I would have pursued getting one. It's not a bad goal. It wasn't really my thing. You know, I can tell that it wasn't by thinking it through and thinking the rest of my life through, and I could overcome that longing. Now I would definitely have to have a lot of money to waste before I would buy a car like that. I probably wouldn't anyway, but I might buy a Tesla Model S. That's awesome. I thought it was funny, your point about I'm not prideful. I don't feel prideful. I just feel triumphant. I believe in a feeling of pride, but it could have been done better. It could always be done better, but pride at the attempt, at the learning, at the bravery of facing where it could have been done better. You go, disgust, envy, and torment. Well, disgust, I mean, I think this is such a physical thing. It's a good example because we have the nausea reactions to things. But how do you think people work in sewer, you know, in waste treatment plants? I know a guy worked for 20 years, tired from waste treatment plant, you know. If you just force yourself to be exposed, that'll take a long time. You have to swallow your disgust and you get over it, you know, and it's this way and you can make it less. And if will is changing things, you can't tell me that it has to be that will would have to be not having disgust at all. But you know, I could pretty much do that. After being a parent, the things I've had to do, things that were hard, you know, or pets that are hurt, and all the medical things that you run into with life, with yourself and your kids and your pets and stuff, and the changing diapers and the, you know, if there's something disgusting, like if somebody says there's something disgusting has to be taken care of, and I'm going off and I know I'm going to go into a disgusting thing, you know, yeah, if I go in, I'm preparing myself to just let the disgust go through, because I found generally if you're dealing with something disgusting, it's to clean it up. Changing diapers is a perfect example because it'll really gross you out when you start, but you're cleaning your baby. That's the positive thing. So it's not really, it depends how you look at it. Yeah, there's shit there, it's gross, it's so dirty, but not really. You're cleaning. The baby ends up clean. You wash your hands, everything ends up clean. You just visualize that this is cleaning things up. This isn't me getting dirty, this is me cleaning, you know. And it's nice to see your little baby all clean and happy, and get over it. Envy I I got over that around 14, I think. That's a really dangerous one. You have to nip that son of a bitch in the bud. That is never worth anything, envy. Torment, that's a thing. To feel tormented, I mean, torment implies that something keeps happening, right? So, the thing is, why would you choose these feelings? Look, suffering, sadness, disappointment, shame, neglect, sympathy, horror, nervousness. Look, a lot of these, like feeling neglected. Why would you choose to feel that or not anyway? The point of feeling neglected is you should feel neglected when you're being neglected, right? When you are being neglected, you want to detect that situation and you want to feel appropriately, right? We'll get to some other ones that are examples like that. These are, suffering, sadness, disappointment, shame, neglect, sympathy, horror, nervousness. I think you could turn nervousness off. I think I'll be bold today, you said. Yeah. I mean, why can't you buck yourself up for that and paddle really hard in the not nervous direction? And if it's like exercise, if you do it every day, it'll become natural. Hello? Why are we arguing that? I can't believe, I don't believe that in your life you haven't done these sorts of things. And it seems to me like the logical trick that you're dealing with is that, well, you can't choose what state you're already in. The will isn't about choosing what state you're already in. It's about paddling from that state to the next state, right? And even though, part of the argument about will is that, but aren't we saying will got you to that place? Well, yes and no, because if you went back all the way to the beginning of your will, you didn't start it off. Whatever it started off with was already there. But then again, we're talking about first causes? There is no first cause. So I'm not on a search for the will is the first cause and prime mover. No. I mean, evolution comes along before the will and generates that. So I mostly want to know how that processing works because it affects my mental well-being. I'm not trying to get a glory of, and I will, because again, I am a system. I'm not a single thing. I'm a colony of, eukaryotic life forms. They are all somehow in their dance, expressing this phenomenon will, which is fundamental importance. So these things are just labels of how you feel, but you can always put your oar in the water and paddle and affect all of these. Okay, suffering. Okay, suffering is there like feeling pain when you get cut. So you can know that you have to move your situation, move places. You have to change your space and time to get out of a situation, right? And if you're suffering just because you're depressed and you look at your situation and you go, well, it's not that bad, I don't want to change it, then yeah, you can visualize your situation enough to figure out why you're really suffering. It's some affect in your mind is piping energy over to a suffering because it doesn't want to admit that it's, mad at its mom or whatever. Disappointment. See, disappointment is one where you should just be trying to find out if you should be disappointed. You should be honest. You had a goal. A lot of people, they set up a goal, when it doesn't come down, they don't want to be disappointed, so they oh, that wasn't my goal. I prefer to go be disappointed for a bit, just not be a big pity party, but some disappointment is appropriate when the appointment was dissed. Right? Shame. Shame is totally worthless slave emotion injected into people to control them. You do not have to feel shame at all. Neglected, you should be trying to find out if you're feeling sympathy for somebody, yeah, that's one you can turn up and turn down, and people have turned their sympathy down because they're numb. It's a perfect example of why we should admit we can affect these things. Yeah, you can turn your sympathy up by imagining yourself in the person's position. You can easily, always. And I know this too because I have inappropriately been sympathetic just because I know how to create sympathy, and I think it's a good thing. So yeah, whether you should or not is another thing. Should you have sympathy for this person becomes a more important question, right? Horror, well, again, you know, your brain is trying to react appropriately. What are you supposed to do? If something horrible happens, would you want to be happy? Well, I get to choose my feelings. I have free will, so I choose my feelings. So I'm always happy. I just laugh. No, it's a horrible situation. Horror is an appropriate response. And if you're being horrified when it's not appropriate, like you're a racist and you're horrified that the, you know, Congolese family is allowed to eat in the restaurant, you could deal with that horror. You don't have to just go, but it's horrifying. No. Nervousness, we all deal with nervousness. I would think that'd be a good example. All the fondness and liking, you're trying to find out if you should like someone. You're trying to discover the feeling related to the situation. You want it to be an appropriate response. You talked about the eagerness when we were younger. Well, yeah, eagerness wanes with age. It's not because we've given up into defeat. It's because eagerness is not an effective emotional strategy. Anticipation is better. But eagerness, it just doesn't pay off. That's why we stop using it. Yeah, the difference between surprise and astonishment is that surprise is an instantaneous thing, a change in your environment or something that causes a, disturbance in your thought processes, and you stop that thought and something is grabbed it. It's surprising. Astonishment is a more, the way I think of the word, long-term feeling about something. It does relate to surprise. It's like something that continues to be surprising. But when it's finally not surprising anymore, it's astonishing because it wasn't just a novelty. It wasn't just somebody going boo behind you that surprised you. No matter how much you look at this thing, it remains amazing and hard to picture, and you have to invent a new picture. There are emotional identifiers. Many of them overlap. I see the identifiers. It doesn't matter what I really am, other than I'm not an atomic thing. I'm a system. So there's not going to be a single thing willing. Will is going to be about how that energy in the brain works when you think you're choosing something and willing something, when you are remembering perceptions and having a subjective experience, right? I make judgments. Of course, they're arbitrary, but you can, use a lot of different perspectives to get different judgments to try to help spread it out, because you have to take a perspective. You can't speak a sentence or have a thought without a perspective. No matter how abstract it is, it comes off of some material thing, space and time. You mentioned melancholy, and I think melancholy is among the sad emotions. It can be nice. It's like a cup of tea in an overcast day, and a little bit of melancholy can cure a lot of baggage, painful baggage, cure baggage. I like to mix my metaphors. So, if it besets you, then getting out of melancholy can be very difficult. But if it doesn't beset you, but you're just kind of like, you wake up and you think about your grandmother, your late grandmother, you know, a little bit of melancholy over your morning cup of coffee might do some good. You're right. I could tell the difference between insecurity and embarrassment. Insecurity is how you, well, literally, whether you feel secure, you know, like a safety thing, but obviously we mean emotionally, how emotionally stable you feel. Can you maintain a mood you want to maintain? Whereas embarrassment has to do with what you think other people now have reason or do think about you. So pretty totally different, yeah. I also pity the pattern recognition disabled, because that's all we have is a pattern recognition machine here. Yeah, will is just a pattern, a dynamic pattern, and there's energy and particles and fields and behavior and, amazingly enough, subjective perspectives associated with it. And that's what I'm not saying anything else than that. I want to look into it. I'm not buying it's just a pattern, therefore it doesn't exist. I think patterns exist, especially physical patterns in the material, world. Yeah, so there's nobody there. I know that. I don't expect a person to be there. I expect it to be a system expressing a behavior that is will. And willpower is about how this will can be ducted, and, you know, what kind of a power system is it. Okay, cheers.